friends, today's topic is Introduction to Set Design. A set is a space design, an expression that involves the audience interest and provokes them to find links with the text situation or play rather than merely presenting the visual literally. Set is an essential part of any performance. Even the decision of keeping the stage sans any object or construction is but a design decision in itself. The concept of designing is ever evolving, and speaking of set design, we have a long list of historical evidence to prove so. But in this lecture, I shall briefly touch upon the history of theatre design before moving on to the general approach to designing a set in contemporary times. The history of theatre architecture and design displays various phases at various periods of time with respect to different countries in the world. I have divided this segment into two subsections. The first shall throw a light on the journey of theatre architecture and set designing with respect to the global timeline, while in the latter I shall broadly be covering the scenic journey witnessed by our own country in all its aspects, that is, pre-colonization, during the colonial rule and post-colonial era. However, before I begin, I would like to specify that covering the entire history of the evolution of scenic design in a short time is not possible. Therefore, I have only covered few significant developments in both the sections. The ancient Greek theatres are amongst the oldest proofs of human civilization's interest in the performing arts. They were very large, open-air structures that took advantage of sloping hillsides for their terraced seating. They constituted mainly of four elements: the orchestra, located in the center where the actual performance took place; the scene, a large rectangular building right behind the orchestra, providing as the backdrop; the paradoi, the area between the scene and the seats meant for actors' entry and exit; and the theatron, where the spectators sat. The principles of Greek stage design were later assimilated by the Roman theatre, with slight changes in the shape of the orchestra and the scene style. The device of the multiple stage setting, which simultaneously depicted all the locales of a play's action, existed during the classical period and became characteristic of the European medieval theatre. In performances of mystery plays, the interior of a church and latter the exterior wall served as a background. Three-dimensional props were used. For example, a pavilion represented heaven and the jaws of a dragon represented hell. While in many countries of medieval Asia, including Indochina, China and Japan, abstract symbolic stage settings predominated, with isolated scenic elements indicating locales. During the 15th and early 16th centuries in Italy, perspective was introduced by artists who devised sets depicting a street going off into the distance. This set, painted on canvas, stretched on wooden frames. Such sets portrayed a single, unchanging locale for plays of a certain genre. Further developments in stage design were the invention of wing flats in Italy and the introduction of the proscenium stage, influencing the European and Russian theatre as well. This conception of style still predominates even in the 21st century. As the Romantics appealed for historically accurate stage sets, the stage designers created complex multiple stage settings that combined historical accuracy with beauty. The growing complexity of stage machinery demanded the use of a curtain between various acts. An innovation introduced in 1829 in the Grand Opera in Paris. In the late 1870s, idealized and unreal stage sets were criticized by Émile Zola, who advocated an accurate portrayal of specific social environments. This trend was opposed by the French symbolist theatre that practiced simplified, refined and stylized sets, whose imagery was similar to that of modernism. In the early 20th century, the directors Adolphe Appia in Switzerland and Gordon Craig in England advocated a philosophical theatre with abstract, timeless sets. In these sets, the appearance of large-scale stereometric elements such as cubes, platforms and steps would be altered by means of light. The influence of Cubism and Futurism was also apparent in stage design, as seen in the sets of Alexander Exter in Russia and in the paintings of Picasso and Matisse, affirming the concept of theatricality as an independent, self-apparent value. While in Germany, stage design was influenced by Expressionism. This influence was manifested by shifting oblique surfaces, startling contrasts of light and shadow, and deformed scenic elements that created a world of morbid visions. On the whole, 20th century stage design has drawn on abundant resources, including synthetic materials, luminescent paints, collages, photographs, and film projections, mirrors, and complex lighting systems. While the function of the stage designer became increasingly important, and stage design was regarded as the representational aspect of directing. In the field of Indian theatre, the idea of stage design initially differed in basic principles from the West. Like in classical Sanskrit theatre and also the folk forms, the need to physically show the environment or background did not exist because Indian traditions were non-realistic. They are also non-representational and ritualistic in content and form. Being openly presentational in expression, they were highly stylized, predominantly using elements of dance and gesture to suggest or describe a locale. Thus, Sanskrit drama was staged in buildings within temple or palace complexes constructed according to the principles outlined in the Natya Shastra, carefully measured. A change in locale was suggested by a circumambulation around the stage and the new environment described by gestures and words. There was only a back wall with 2 doors for entrances. Folk performance is generally held in open-air venues. The performing area is at ground level while the audience is seated in about 3/4 of a circle around it. A piece of cloth usually demarcates the backstage and the performing area. During the late 18th century, in Bengal and Maharashtra, a new urban theatre originated. To host their entertainments in India, the British constructed formal proscenium arch playhouses in growing cities like Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai. Interested natives evolved a new concept of theatre based on Western idioms of performance influenced by reading Shakespeare and other European playwrights, presenting texts inspired by the stagecraft but soon incorporating Indian mythological stories. The Renaissance Italianate style of painted perspective scenery became Indianized, offering a simple solution to the production of vast visual extravaganzas. In Mumbai, painted sets grew popular during this time. Initially, single painted curtains depicted different places. Nearly 4 to 6 curtains in a production pictured all the locations. This technique soon underwent further elaboration. By the turn of the century, a scene was represented by 2 or 3 curtains cut in various shapes and placed one after the another. This is actually to create a feeling of enhanced depth. The use of painted scenery continued till the late 1920s, whereafter a new movement began to take shape. Ibsenian realism became important, coinciding with new plays written on social issues. Painted curtains gave way to painted flats and multiple levels on the stage, with realistic furniture and properties. Along with levels came the wagon stage and the revolving stage as early as 1933 in Kolkata. Designers like Charu Roy, Raman Chatterjee and Manindranath Das becoming the forerunners of the new style. In 1953, there was a revival in Marathi theatre, leading to the emergence of a large number of artists experimenting with ideas and design using abstract forms and symbolic settings suggestive of the stylized realism or expressionism of Max Reinhardt. Designers like D.G. Godse, Damu Kenkre, Raghuveer Talashilkar, Mohan Wagh and Shyam Adarkar transformed sets into a new instrument in the theatre. Last few decades have seen a constant struggle amongst Indian designers to try and evolve an Indian scenography exploring the ideals and design principles based upon the folks and classics with respect to contemporary times. Now, let us discuss about the importance of a set designing in performance. A set is an integral part of any performance, as it visually communicates the style and tone of the whole production, creates mood and atmosphere, gives clues as to the specific time and place of the action, and offers creative possibilities for the movement and grouping of the actors. Space and performance are correlationally related. A set is the first impression of a play. When the audience enters a performance area, the very first communication established with the performance, that's where the first giving and receiving takes place. The inquisitiveness of the audience is received by the space designed for the performance, which in turn invokes some kind of emotional or intellectual response in them, thus preparing them to be directed towards the mind frame desired. This relationship, therefore, is more than enough to emphasize the importance of set designing in a performance. Hence, it is the responsibility of the performer or director, or as in most cases, the scenic designer, to ensure that all decisions are taken carefully and with a clear mind, and every detail has been taken care of with utmost attention. Let us now discuss about certain factors that one needs to keep in mind before designing the set for any performance. Factors we need to keep in mind while designing the set. We need to ensure our understanding about the following factors with respect to the performance before we start. These are the style, period and mood of the play. Whether the play is being performed in an open-air theatre or a proscenium, or is a site-specific performance. The space chosen for the performance, the total number of locales and scene changes to be incorporated, the scale of the production, inclusive of the total number of cast and crew, and the budget. Keeping these in mind, let us now discuss in detail about the steps to design a set. Once a play has been selected for production, one of the first steps is a concept meeting. During this meeting, general concepts about the production are thought through and worked out by the director and designers. The scenic designer notes the ideas discussed at this meeting, reads the script several times and makes a mood board based upon the script's feel. Mood board is an emotional response to a text or situation around which the performance is woven. Making a mood board helps the designer to connect with the deeper meanings in a more organic fashion. A mood board can be a box or a piece of plain chart paper or anything. It consists of objects, materials or colors that resulted as the designer's initial response to the script or the performance piece. Once the mood board is made, the designer now begins research, gathering information about the time period of the production, including architecture, furniture and images of everyday life, along with objects that represent the mood that the director has in mind. After gathering enough factual information on the basis of research, the designer then arrives to a point where this information is peacefully blended with the elements of the mood board. The best way for this is to create a number of sketches as form of visual dialogue with the audience. Once the scenic designer settles on a design concept which has the potential to communicate with the audience and is pragmatic in its approach, he or she will sketch the ideas using pencil, paint, photographs and collage and then share these sketches with the director and other designers. These sketches are discussed and reflected upon by the team, who in turn exchange their ideas and responses along with any practical glitches that might be apparent to them. A number of sketch drafts might be needed in circulation before a concept is finalized, so it is best to be patient. As we can see, these sketches only give us an idea of what the designer is looking at and therefore are not required to be scaled. Once the concept sketches are approved by the director, the designer is then responsible for creating a scale model based on the sketch, reflecting the colors, textures, shapes and feel of the scenic design in finer details. This not only helps the director to block the scenes, it also acts as a perfect communication for all the departments, including the cast, to fall in sync and to know what to expect. In case there are no practical errors to tend to at this stage, the designer then goes ahead with finalizing the design and set the technical drawings right for the carpenters and other teams for execution. The scale drawings are the blueprints of the set. Let us now talk about the responsibilities of a scenic designer. The role of a scenic designer has changed over the period of times, Today, the scenic designer works with the director and other designers to establish an overall visual concept for the production and design the stage environment. The scenic designer works towards creating an environment for the production and then communicating the details of this environment to each department. They are responsible for developing a complete set of design drawings that include the following: basic ground plan showing all stationary scenic elements, composite ground plan showing all moving scenic elements, indicating both their onstage and storage positions, all technical drawings comprising of front elevations or sections of units as required, scale models of the scenery, renderings, paint elevations. There are several software available for recreating a more technical and scaled drawing from a sketch, where all the above can be easily created. For example, AutoCAD. Once the show opens, the designer's work is now almost complete, and the responsibility is then handed over to the stage manager and backstage crew to make sure that every aspect of the production runs just as the designer intended each time until the last performance. Remember, the biggest challenge for a scenic designer is to be original, innovative, with a constant reality check of the budget available. As a designer, one's innate responsibility is to create a visual concept interpreting the director's vision, constructed in a manner where one can convey the essence of the entire performance visually. At the same time, keeping a pragmatic approach when it comes to constructing the set. Therefore, designing a set can be one of the most exciting and enriching experience, as one constantly keeps looking for newer inspirations and better creative ways to help narrate a story. So before I leave, let me tell you about some important set designers of the past and present. Inigo Jones, the first significant British architect of the early modern period and the first to employ Vitruvian rules of proportion and symmetry in his buildings. He made major contributions to stage design by his work as theatrical designer for several dozen masques, most of royal command and many in collaboration with Ben Jonson. Edward Jordan Craig, a theatre designer who was also an actor, producer and theorist, influenced the development of the theatre architecture in the 20th century by his revolutionary theories. His productions were marked by simplicity and unity of concept, with the emphasis being placed on the movement of actors and of light. He established his school for the art of the theatre in 1903. To him, outlines, forms, colors, and lighting were a means of conveying atmosphere to invoke an emotional response in the audience. Craig's stage productions, and even more, his writings and his highly stylized stage designs, woodcuts, and etchings strongly influenced the anti-naturalist trends of the modern theatre in the first half of the 20th century. Though, like his counterpart, Adolphe Appia, he designed very little that was actually staged. Adolphe Appia was a Swiss architect, stage designer, whose theories and works transformed the practice of stage design and helped in bringing in a new realism and creativity to 20th century theatrical production. His published works propounded his revolutionary theories, and his works denied pictorial realism. Instead, it aimed at creating a believable mood for each scene in any performance. His influence of drawings and productions were vast and lasting. Barry Kay, a stage and costume designer, has designed for the ballet, drama and opera alike. His emphasis lay in pioneering three-dimensional stage set designs for the ballet. By breaking away from the traditional use of flat-wing scenery in designing for the theatre, he expanded on the revolutionary ideas of the Russian constructivists and the Italian futurists in the early part of the 20th century. S. Serlio, Alexander Exter, Alexander Benoist, Robert Wilson, Neil Patel, Russell Patterson, Oliver Smith, Robin Wagner are some more examples of designers with their unique artistic understanding of creating space into their own mediums of expression. So, with this, we come to an end of today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. That's all for today. Thank you.